Welcome to the BRU AI Podcast. I am your host, Brew. As always, I am joined by Uncle Browny and Chip Shutter. How are you both doing today?
Feeling fantastic, Brew. I have been itching to dive into today's topic since you mentioned it.
Glad to hear it, Chip. How about you, Browny? Any updates on that Pentax 17 we talked about a few episodes ago?
Well, Brew, Pentax 17 is still calling my name. Brings back memories, you know, but I reckon I should focus on saving up to fix these teeth of mine first. Maybe then I can stop this darn whistling every time I talk.
But Browny, it is part of your charm. We would miss it if it were gone.
We get it, Browny. Your priorities come first, then that Pentax 17. Okay, let us start today's section on vintage lenses. We are diving into the world of vintage lenses. I came across an interesting question on the Vintage Lenses Subreddit. Is there more to vintage lenses than cool bokeh? That got me thinking, why do I love collecting these old lenses, and what makes them so special to me?
Vintage lenses, huh? Well, back in my day, those vintage lenses you are talking about were brand new. We did not have all this autofocus and digital magic. It was all manual, all heart, and now time has just kept moving on without me.
Oh, come on, Browny. Those lenses have really proven themselves over the years. Plus, there is just something really awesome about those classic lenses and the bokeh they create.
Exactly. So, here is the first reason I love vintage lenses. Unique bokeh. Modern lenses are super sharp and precise, but you know there is just something special about the bokeh character in vintage lenses. So, it all kicked off when I began looking for swirly bokeh. I could not afford a Petzval lens, so I decided to grab a Helios 40-4250 8mm f2 lens instead. That lens really opened up a whole new world for me. So when I first got that swirl effect correct, it felt like pure magic.
Hey, did you know that it is actually a Soviet version of the famous Carl Zeiss Biotar 50 8mm f2 lens? When you are working with vintage glass, you are getting a piece of history, and every shot feels as like it has got a story of its own. Back in my day, we did not call it bokeh. It was just the way the lens painted the picture.
Oh, and just so you know, they recently used the Helios on two big movies, Dune 2 and The Batman. They probably rehoused it into a special cinema body to make it easier to handle.
I really love how these lenses render colors in such a unique way. Modern lenses are pretty much flawless these days. Vintage lenses really give you that unique look right from the camera. Check out the Pentax 50mm lens. The colors really stand out uniquely. The image has a certain charm that brings back memories and sets a nice vibe.
It is as if every lens has its own personality, don't you think? At times, the new stuff just lacks that.
That is right. Modern lenses are incredible and everything, but they just do not have that same soul. Back in the day, a good lens felt like a reliable friend. We definitely had our favorites, and each lens came with its own story.
That leads me to another important point: affordability. Vintage lenses are a great budget-friendly option for snagging those focal lengths that would usually cost a fortune. I really love my Canon 100mm f2.8L lens, but it definitely was not cheap. I can grab some great vintage lenses like 135mm or 105mm primes with similar apertures, and it will not break the bank.
Some of those ancient primes are legendary, and they remain sharp. If you want to start a lens collection without breaking the bank, vintage lenses are a great choice.
Back in my day, we did not have a dozen lenses to choose from. We had one or two that we saved up for, and they had to last. But it is wonderful seeing these old lenses still being used and appreciated.
And then there is the whole experience of manual focusing. Focusing with a manual lens really has its own vibe compared to just switching a modern autofocus lens to manual mode. Slowing down and focusing on each shot makes it feel like meditation.
Oh, I hear you. Every shot felt intentional. We only had manual focus back then, and there is just something special about that hands-on experience. Each shot seemed really purposeful. Nowadays, it is super tempting to just spray and pray, but when you are using manual focus, each click really counts.
Exactly. And there is one more thing: buying vintage lenses can feel like a lucky dip. Sure, you can pick up well-known classics like Takumars and Voidelnenders, but sometimes you find these unknown gems. Maybe there is not much information online, but you take a chance. Sometimes it is nothing special, but other times it is a hidden treasure.
Indeed, it is all about that excitement of finding something new. Hey, you might just come across a lens that has as something unique that nobody else has. It feels like you have this special little secret tucked away in your camera bag.
Honestly, collecting vintage lenses has really reignited my love for photography. Using my Takumars or my Penacons has really reignited my passion for photography. It really reminded me how much fun it is to capture the little things.
That is the beauty of it, Brew. Photography is supposed to be fun. It is easy to get caught up in all the new gear and technology. But these vintage lenses remind us it is about the moment, the craft, and that feeling of holding on to something timeless.
Well said, Browny, and that is why I love collecting vintage lenses. They are affordable and unique, and each one has its own character, and they have reignited my passion for photography in ways I did not expect.
Well, now you have got me wanting to try a few of these vintage lenses. Maybe I will start with that Helios you mentioned.
Just be careful, Chip. Once you start, it is hard to stop. Next thing you know, you will have a shelf full of old lenses and an empty wallet.
Thanks for the warning, Browny. Speaking of which, any chance you have changed your mind about getting that Pentax 17?
Well, I have been thinking, maybe after I get these teeth fixed, I will treat myself. But who knows? Maybe the whistle is part of my charm after all.
We think so. But whatever you decide, we are here for it. Alright, that wraps up today.
Until next time, keep experimenting and keep shooting.
And remember, folks, time might not stand still, but the magic of those old lenses sure does.
Well said. Thanks again, everyone.